5, 4, 3, 2.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marty Solomon. I'm a faculty physician and an adult pulmonologist at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, and I've been leading a group to develop this Southeast Regional CF Research Town Hall Series. We appreciate your attendance tonight. I have been involved with cystic fibrosis research for almost 15 years at various different levels, and it's my honor to welcome you all to this first of a 4-part town hall series that we hope you guys will be able to join us for. First, I want to start with a very important word of thanks to those that have been involved with the Town Hall Series Planning Committee, specifically my co-chair, Rachel Rich, who's been instrumental in making this happen. Our other members, Miles Fowler, one of our MDs at UAB, Rachel Linneman and Eric Hunter from Emory, Christine Bojanowski from Tulane, Adrian Savant from Tulane, and Ariel Berlinski from the University of Arkansas. A very special thanks to Margaret Smith at MD, the area director for the regional CF chapters, and all the chapters for their assistance. And a very special word of thanks to the CFF partners, especially Genevieve Mauve, who's been very generous with her time and efforts and talents with helping us to design this town hall series. I want to orient you all quickly to Zoom before we get into introducing the town hall series. For those that are less familiar, Zoom is set up with this, and there are a few important buttons you should be aware of. First, we recommend you use the speaker view. This will allow you to see an audio and video of this person speaking, but not taking up too much of the screen, so you can see the slides when they're being presented. On the bottom of the screen, you'll see a toolbar with a few important buttons. The far left is a chat button, which you can interact casually with attendees and panelists, but it's not the place to put in questions for the Q&A. If you wish to have a Q&A question submitted, please submit it under the Q&A with the icon shown here. In addition, if you prefer Spanish language captions, please click the show captions, and a live transcript in Spanish will pop up for your use throughout the rest of this webinar. This town hall was envisioned to accomplish a few objectives. The first is to familiarize you as attendees with the clinical research process and the Southeast CF Research Cooperative. This cooperative is an interaction of several research centers throughout the Deep South committed to assisting with referrals for research and promotion of CF research throughout this region. We also hope to familiarize attendees with how this clinical researchers protect your safety and privacy, especially with increasing complexity of CF research in the new era of CF research. And finally, inform you as attendees about new areas of the CF research and how you can become involved in these trials across the spectrum of types of research studies. The topics for these town hall series will help us to accomplish these objectives. Town Hall 1, which we're part of tonight, will cover the consent and protections of your safety. In Town Hall 2, the research referral processes to the SERC and others will be discussed, and that will be hosted on September 7th at the same time. Town Hall 3 will be hosted on September 19th and will include an introduction of the processes of clinical research and segue into Town Halls 3 and 4, in which we'll introduce new research efforts, including genetic-based therapies, on October 5th. And that will conclude our Town Hall series in these 2 months. The agenda for tonight includes these introductions, and then our first town hall presentation and a patient testimonial, and followed by question and answer. We ask that you hold all your question and answers and put them in the Q&A using that button, as your audio has been disabled throughout this webinar. Our featured speakers tonight are Rachel Rich, a lead research coordinator at our center at University of Alabama at Birmingham, and Joe Bufi, a research participant who presented as a research referral from the University of Washington to our center recently. I'm going to turn it over to Rachel, and thank you very much for your attendance again, and we hope will find this to be helpful to you tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Solomon. Good evening. I am Rachel Rich. I'm a research coordinator at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. I'm covering the topic this evening, informed consent, and how your safety is a priority. Next slide. Our objectives for tonight's webinar are to discuss the challenges to informed consent, to introduce the development for a more intentional informed consent process between the CF study team and the patient support system. There's a referral guideline between the CF centers. And then to discuss necessary patient safety measures from consenting, study treatment, and into follow-up. Next slide. Some informed consent challenges. We have the study referral checklist, which is a resource provided by the TDN to ensure proper communication from the research participant and the treating center. Who doesn't love a good checklist? It is available on mycff.org. Some of our patients can have, oh wait, go back. Sorry. All right. So some of our patients have, there's multiple ways for a patient to express interest in a study. There's a self-referral where information can be found on Clinical Trial Finder, where new trials and sites are listed that are currently enrolling. The patients can find the information and directly contact the RC. There's also the treating CF teams, which inform patients of potential eligibility, and that's how they hear if they're eligible to participate in a study. This checklist helps us gather information needed to confirm eligibility, along with opening the lines of communication between the research center and the CF team. Some of the challenges we face are the time for decision making. We want to ensure the study participant has ample amount of time to choose to participate in the study. The language of the consent form is also important. We want the patient to have the ability to understand of what we are signing. What is the purpose of the study and how will it affect them? Having multiple levels of communication between the research team and the participant helps develop that relationship. It allows them to have frequent communication, whether it's email, Zoom calls, phone conversations. We want to keep the communication open for any questions that may arise. For instance, can they be on a certain medication? How long is follow-up? What are study endpoints? Screening for a study is not a one phone call conversation. Next slide. The CF Foundation has a phrase, until it's done, and that is our goal that we are constantly working towards. Until it's done means we are reaching that 8 to 10% of the diverse CF population and the development of new research so that we are able to meet the needs of those patients that are not eligible for modulators. The consenting process for our early phase therapies will have a different approach. It's going to be more involved. So the protocols will be reviewed more in depth to be able to cover study visits and timelines that will be expected of the research participant. Some studies will have an inpatient stay for observations post-study drug administration. This observational period is for the patient's safety. Early phase participation may prevent eligibility for future studies, which is definitely something to consider. Next slide. The development of the informed consent. As a research center, we want to further develop the informed consent process, especially with more involved studies coming up, such as phase 1 or genetic therapies. Our goal is to ensure that the participant is aware of the unique risks and potential side effects of the study drug, so they are mindful of what to watch for during the treatment portion of the study. In recent years, we've had multiple modulator studies that had their own set of risks, and now we have genetic therapies coming out that may have their own risk factors. Stay tuned on October 5th, where we'll go more in depth about the genetic therapies. The CF Foundation is amazing because the clinical trial information is at the patient's fingertips. You have the ability to search for clinical trials based on your own needs. The Clinical Trial Finder is a tool to find out what's available and what is open to accrual and which centers are participating in these studies. Another development in the form consent is to go over study timelines and requirements. I personally have a rough draft of a study schedule to make sure the patient knows how much time and travel is required. Each study varies on what the expectations are, so it needs to be discussed prior to coming in for a screening visit. especially for our patients who are traveling across from different CF centers. Next. The informed consent process. This applies to all types of studies, whether it's genetic therapies, infection control, or observational studies. We have these steps in place for the informed consent process. Step 1, we're going to present the study. The principal investigator and the research team present the study to the eligible patient. We review the consent form in our usual fashion and answer initial questions. Our step 2 is the follow-up discussion. We have in-person or Zoom-based discussion, phone calls to encourage the patient and bring in their support system for any additional questions. We want to make sure that there's an understanding of the risks, the benefits, and the whole trial and what the expectations are. Our step 3 is to set up that screening visit and sign the informed consent together. Next slide. Key questions for research participants, just to make sure they have a full understanding of the consent and what's all involved. What are the patient's motivations? How did you decide to consider participating in the study? How does your family feel about it? You know, do they have that support system? And are they everyone on board? What risks? What are your biggest concerns about participating? And then the study timing. The timing of the study visits and procedures. Will they work with your schedule? Most studies do have a window to capture study procedures. For instance, plus or minus 2 days, plus or minus a week. So there is some wiggle room and schedules can be accommodated. Next. Next, we'll move on to patient safety. Open communication between study participants, treating centers, and the research team has proven to increase patient safety. We need to start the conversation before the patient comes in for the screening visit. This brings us back to our checklist for referrals. There will already be communication between the CF nurse navigator or CF physician and the research team. For example, if we have a patient that's traveling, let's say from Montana, that is experiencing a known side effect of the study drug from the clinical trial that the patient's enrolled at, we'll say UAB. We will already have communication in place that if something were to happen, we would encourage them to reach out to their treating center and then be evaluated, and then the information would already be able to be communicated with the treating team and the research team. Keeping everyone in the loop is very important. Next slide. Safety in clinical trials. As you can see from the image, there are multiple layers of safety that goes into a clinical trial. All clinical trials have to go through various entities to certify that that study drug administered during the treatment portion of the trial is deemed safe. Each study will go through this pipeline before enrollment. The Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. Study sponsors, whether it's an industry study or investigator initiated. The TDN has a team that completes a scientific review of the clinical research study. Check-ins with the Data Safety Monitoring Board. The IRB also keeps this in check, providing oversight to the study's benefits and risks. The site study team and research team also reviews the safety of potential participants. And then we have the patient's role, reviewing the information within the consent and getting all the questions answered. Then there's a whole nother layer once the study is open to accrual and a site is active. The research site is constantly monitored and the data is reviewed to make sure the patient's safety is a priority. And research is also entirely voluntary. Yes, we can sign an informed consent, but at any time the patient can change their mind. Next slide. In conclusion, my hope is that you are able to get an overview of the patient's safety along with a complete understanding of the research-informed consent process. Our big picture is what the study entails, the study requirements, timing of visits, and side effects to watch for. Is everyone on board with the patient, the support system, the treating center, and the research team? We want everyone talking and involved. And finally, our goal is to have an approach based on sound ethical principles, partnership, and extra attention to these unique challenges will ensure success. And last but not least, I'm so grateful for Joe from Washington State is with us tonight. Joe participated in an investigator-initiated trial here at UAB and is willing to discuss his experience as a research participant. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, I appreciate the intro, Rachel. Thanks. I'm Joe. I've had cystic fibrosis my whole life. I was born with it. My case has been, it was intense in the beginning of my life, and it's kind of mellowed out a little bit. It's a little bit more mild of a case these days. But sort of just to preface my participation in this study, I've got lots of research participant experience. I usually want to participate in data collection and other surveys that I might be approached for, just because I know how valuable, how vital that data could be. And for people like me, not just for the researchers, and it's just for myself too. I'm allowed to be selfish about it a little bit. It's important for me to know that these people are collecting data and doing research to benefit a condition that I have. They don't have this condition. It's for me. They're doing it for me. And so I've always been very appreciative of researchers for that reason. So as soon as we found out about the study, my mom and dad, they were both like, well, you're doing it right. You have to do this. This is such an important opportunity for you. And I knew I wanted to participate right away, or at least I knew I wanted to learn more about what the study was going to be like for me right away. And so I can kind of just jump into what to expect. So initially, I was sent the full informed consent form where they're sharing about what the study is, what the intentions are, what my participation would look like. So a lot of my questions were answered right there already. Even before I talked to the research coordinator, Rachel, before we even had our first phone call, I knew I had a real good idea of what I was getting into. And that first phone call was very helpful. I mean, I asked her about travel and timelines, and financial compensation was important for me because I live in Seattle. So I was commuting from Seattle, Washington, all the way to Birmingham, Alabama each time. And so I knew that would get expensive quickly. I knew it would be a lot of time that it would take. I'd have to take, quite a few days off of work so that I could do that during the week. But right after that first phone call, I knew it'd be worth it, because this was an opportunity for me to experience the benefits of a medical intervention that someone with my particular mutation for cystic fibrosis would not normally have access to. So I knew I wanted to do that for sure. So I was able to read over the informed consent. It was basically a summary of the entire study, the itinerary for each visit, what we'd be doing, the things that we'd be working on for each visit. So it was real nice and laid out for me right at the get-go. And I knew that UAB and University of Washington, where my cystic fibrosis clinic is, would be talking together the whole time. And the fact that they'd be communicating with my doctors, my clinic, the whole time was comforting for me, because this was this clinic in Alabama. I didn't know any of these people. I didn't know the researchers. I didn't know the physicians, but I did know the people who were setting me up with this, and that were referring me as a referral patient to this study in the first place. So that was comforting right there. And everything flowed easy. It was comfortable knowing that any information that I wanted, or I came up with a question, Rachel even just be a text away. It was very easy for me to come up with questions and get them answered almost immediately. And that also helped me kind of decide, like, this is something that I want to be a part of, because these people don't feel like they're dodging my questions. It feels like they're very straight up with me, very honest, very communicative. And Rachel even said it herself, communication is key. And that's absolutely right. And it helped me feel comfortable this whole time with being a participant. And then so right away too, I was aware of any kind of potential side effects that might have been associated with the intervention. I knew what the intended health benefits were, and that was enough to get me excited enough. I just wanted to participate. And so, with the travel, with the participation, knowing that I'd be financially compensated was helpful, but it's a lot of time. I mean, those flights, it was 16 flights in all. and because there was a layover each time from Seattle to Alabama. And it was over the course of just a short amount of time, right? It's like 6 weeks or 2 months or something like that for this particular study. So I knew I'd be on the plane quite a bit. But after the first time, it became very clear to me that, you know, all right, I'll bring a book, I'll bring some music, make sure I've got headphones, earplugs. And after that first one, I knew how convenient this whole thing would be. I mean, they put me up in a hotel, and it was literally connected to the research center in the hospital by a sky bridge. I didn't even really have to go outside to go from my room to the clinic. It was incredible. I didn't expect that. I thought for sure it'd be a little bit more inconvenient for me in terms of travel each day. But it wasn't. As soon as I got there, it was convenient for me to get there each time. So lots of flying, but I was financially compensated, you know, only a few weeks after the fact. So that was nice too. You know, I guess it leads me to my favorite part, talking about the health benefits, my long-term health benefits of this study. I mean, I won't get into specifics in terms of what the medical intervention was, but it's led to me feeling, you know, I've got better energy, I've got better appetite, my confidence is through the roof, I've got more motivation, I'm exercising more. It's incredible. My quality of life has skyrocketed, and just the fact that it's possible for me to just say no, I don't want to do it, go find somebody else. It's like, that's insane to me. This was like one of the most important opportunities in my life, and I'm so glad that I took it. And so I don't know, Rachel, I think that's, you know, that's kind of the gist of what I wanted to mention. I'm not sure if there'll be other specific questions for research participants, but I'm always happy to answer them.
Joe and Rachel, I want to thank you for speaking tonight. I have a few questions that we've previously received, and then I wanted to direct to both of you and to any other panelists that are on. I see that a few other committee members are on as panelists, and feel free to raise your hand as a panelist, or Rachel or Joe, and answer in succession if you don't mind. Also, for any participants that would like to submit a question, please put them in the Q&A, and we will filter those up to the speakers and our other panelists tonight in just a few moments. I wanted to lead with a question for Joe, if I might. And Joe, you mentioned how you sort of did a little bit of mental calculus in your head about how to deal with balancing the need for altruism in giving back to the research community and then direct benefit for yourself. Can you talk a little bit about how you came to those conclusions in prior research studies and the one that you've spoken about tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. And I, you know, I'm a scholar myself. I've got 2 bachelor's degrees and a master's degree. I know how important research can be. It's really, you know, I started with sociology, and it's just all about collecting data and getting census data and getting people to participate in surveys and things like that. And so for years now, it's been important to me. And, you know, like at University of Washington, they were always willing to comp me financially. I'd get like little Target gift cards and things like that. And so when I was younger, that was appealing to me. But as I got older, I was more and more interested in, well, how is this benefiting, you know, me long term? How could this benefit the clinic long term? And most importantly, how can this benefit cystic fibrosis patients long term? I mean, without participants, we've got no data, we've got no consent, we've got no people to draw from in terms of, you know, how we can build a better future for people like myself. And so that becomes apparent to me, especially when I think more about, you know, how easy it is to say no. And how easy it is to just say, yep, go find somebody else. I'm not interested. I don't want to give you my time. I don't want to, you know, even with financial compensation, it's not worth it. You know, there's nothing to lose by participating. You know, to me, and maybe I'm biased just because of my academia background, but it's so obvious to me, like, give it a try. The worst thing that happens is maybe this doesn't work for you, or that, or maybe it turns out that, you know, you're feeling like you're more uncomfortable than you thought. For me, that's never actually happened. I mean, as long as you're comfortable with giving blood and things like that, it's relatively comfortable. And once you get into the rhythm of participating in these studies, it becomes more and more comfortable the more you do it. And the less you feel like a test subject, and the more you feel like, oh, I'm a person, and these people are people too, and they're just trying to help me, and they're just trying to help people with my disease. So
I think that's a great point. I get when I just approach research with many patients that the concept of guinea pig comes up, and I think that is something that I try to convince others that we're not doing that, but we definitely have a history of research gone awry in the distant past and in our country and throughout the world. But I think the safeguards that Rachel outlined earlier tell us that the CF community is especially committed to making sure that research is beneficial for the community and the individual participants and is balanced with risk. But I'd be interested, Joe, to get your thoughts about how you feel that translates over into individual patient experience beyond talking about the abstract about that.
Yeah, well, and a lot of it too is just, constantly being reminded by people like Rachel, by research coordinators who care, and by doctors like you who are just genuinely interested in helping out and learning more about a disease. You feel like a person. You're getting treated like a person. I always felt incredibly respected, and I know that my participation is valuable to you, but I also know that without participating in studies like this, especially considering how relatively rare cystic fibrosis as a condition is, that there are only so many people who can give back to the community of cystic fibrosis, and some cystic fibrosis patients would hear what I was talking about with all the travel, and they'd say, absolutely not, I'm too sick, I can't do it. And so for people like me who do have the energy, who have the youth, who have the health to be able to participate in these studies, sometimes it feels like an obligation to me. I'm like, what am I doing? I should do this, and you feel good too. It feels validating. It feels like that, the lifetime of struggling with this disease, maybe all the hardship that I've gone through my entire 29 years of life, it could be all the more worth it when I know that my existence has helped, benefit the futures of other people with cystic fibrosis who have yet to even be born. And so I've adopted that mentality, especially the past 5 or 10 years. I've really been thinking about life as someone with this debilitating disease, and how I can improve the future of cystic fibrosis for the better.
Rachel, question that I would direct to you, and I'm happy to give my thoughts about it after you've responded. What the complex slide you showed about the different levels of safety oversight, both before a protocol is begun and then during protocol execution, in other words, study execution. Can you say ways in which the patient voice is heard in that process, and ways in which you think that is beneficial for safety for the studies?
Yeah, having the patients involved in those different, pathways, and, helping with the safety and making sure that it's reached at each of those different levels just helps. Having that patient voice and the input from them, the CF Foundation takes into that consideration. And so that's unlike, other disease groups where the patient's voice is heard and they take that into account.
I agree. I'm going to go back to that slide real quick and amplify a couple of things you were saying. Just to expound upon some of the description of this slide a little bit, right in the middle of this whole process, from the Food and Drug Administration, who is the overseeing governing body for that a drug is approved, both in the pre-approval process and then after a study is conducted, all the way down to the patient's role. In the middle, in the CF community, is a unique aspect of this. Many times the study sponsor and the FDA, the only input, but the only next step is the local steps, the institutional review board, which reviews the ethics of the study and safety at the local sites, and then the study team and the patients. In the CF community, we're very lucky in that we have got an overseeing body that's run by the Therapeutics Development Network, which, for those that are unaware, is a large collection of centers and an oversight body that's overseen by the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. And in that, there is a protocol review committee and a scientific review committee that looks at the validity of the science that's being studied in the study, and looks at the safety and looks at the feasibility of these studies. And a very important voice in that scientific review is patients, people with cystic fibrosis who are on those panels, and review every one of the study designs and the safety concerns. And their voice is taken as an equal partner with all the other scientific and clinical members of those teams. And the reason for that is because only patients can tell us if a study is feasible. Is it too daunting to do? They can they can tell us if they think that the safety, especially if there is an unknown risk or a theoretical risk, whether or not that will deter patients from being participants in these studies. And so I think that is a unique aspect of the CF community. In addition, the Data Safety Monitoring Board in the CF world, there are two levels of that. There will oftentimes be a Data Safety Monitoring Board convened by the study sponsor, but the CF Foundation has a separate Data Safety Monitoring Board, which includes inputs from patient participants that also oversees unique safety concerns for people with CF. So what does that mean? That means that if there's a unique issue for people with CF that may not be recognized by a more general Data Safety Monitoring Board, the DSMB from the CF Foundation can provide special expertise to ensure that the study is going well. Also importantly, these processes happen in a very rigorous fashion before enrollment begins in a study. That means before the first patient has even been screened for the study itself. And then the processes are happening with significant interaction throughout the entire study, through to the last patient with the last visit in the study. And so that means that at every time there's a potential for a regrouping by multiple different inputs with expertise, including people with CF, to retool and help us understand if the study remains feasible, which is important, and it remains safe for people to continue participating in and beneficial for them to continue participating in. So I want to emphasize that I think that we're in a unique community in the research world to be able to have a situation in which there's so much of a patient voice brought to this. And for those of you that are patients or family, I would encourage you to be involved with this, and certainly to hopefully be comforted by the fact that there's these extra safeguards in place in the CF community that are unique to this community amongst other research areas. I wanted to ask the second question that I want to first of all pose to Rachel, and if there's any other research coordinators, feel free to unmute your mic and input also. One thing that comes up, and I've been asked in other similar town hall type scenarios, is how do you account and prepare patients for theoretical unknown risks in a study? Let's say, for instance, there is where you're consenting a patient for a genetic therapy that may have an immune reaction. We don't know exactly the nature of the immune reaction or the nature of the severity of that immune reaction may happen. How do you answer questions if a patient or a potential participant says, I'm not sure because of the unknowns? How do you address that?
Personally, I would address it, everyone handles medication differently or study drug differently. And everyone has, like for CF patients, there's different levels of CF and the types of disease and what's affected more. So when there's unknown, you just take into account that the more communication that you have and the more response you have between the research team, the more we can come up with answers. And there will always be unknown because of the rare mutations, and we're still learning more information. But as far as participating in a study and knowing the unknown, like they can be the forefront of the study and, be a participant that allows more information for those, and they will no longer be unknowns. We would have that information to help with future research. And so again, with my communication part, like just having that direct communication during the study treatment kind of makes the unknowns less scary, and having, that being able to text or call, or I've had, pictures of rashes, you just have that contact. So then the unknown's not as scary and we're able to handle it in real time.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, Rachel. I mean, other thing to let everyone know that may be less familiar with this process is all of this chain of discussion that have been talking about on this slide that I'm still showing up here, if there's a safety issue at one site, even if it's mild, there is a reporting all the way up this chain of interactions between the various governing bodies and oversight bodies that are listed here, both before the study, if there's a new safety concern that may alter the protocol and or halt initial enrollment, so that we make sure we've answered that before, and certainly during the study as we gain more information. The various people, and I can't emphasize enough the patient's role, you as participants, your role in providing that information to us, and our job at the local level as a site to pass that information up in a way that can be useful to making very sometimes split-second decisions on what to do with the drug, even in the midst of a study, and how to properly take care of an unknown risk which may be assessed, and or a more severe risk than we had predicted going into the study based on the previous science. I think that should tell you that there's a lot of safeguards here. Now, we can never say a study doesn't have risks, of course, and that's what the informed consent process is all about, is assessing the risks, and so that you're aware of the balance of those. But you are also consented to know that we will assess your risk individually throughout the study, and also give you the opportunity to withdraw participation and to participate in follow-up information so that you're aware of what's happening. So I think there's a lot of safeguards there for risk, even if there's an unknown. And as Rachel, you pointed out another important thing, on some of the research we'll be talking about in some of these town halls, we're at an early stage of developing these types of therapies. One example of those is gene-based therapies. Another example of those is the concept of bacteriophages, which are viruses that are directed at bacteria such as Pseudomonas, which have not been studied extensively in people with CF to date. There are some ongoing studies, but not extensive. And so you're going to learn about research that may have some unknowns to it, but we do have to have people that are willing to trust this process and take on some of these risks with these safeguards in place, so that we can learn the initial amount of information in people with CF, so we know what to expect for future studies. We can move this forward in a way that will get to the finish line for new therapies, especially for people that are not currently treated with CFTR modulators or still struggling despite modulators being present. So I think that point that you brought up, we have to have some patient pioneers, is very important. I remember early in my research career being involved with the initial CFTR modulator therapy trials for like ivacaftor, going back over a decade. And there were some patients that were pretty nervous up front because this was an unknown thing. However, their altruism brought to bear that they thought this was worthy of participating. And as a result, we learned a lot early, and we learned how to do these studies the right way, and risks were minimized significantly. And as a result, we moved therapies through these pipelines quite quickly because of those initial pioneering patients. So I appreciate the concept. Joe, I'd be interested to get your thought process on how you think about unknown risks if you were to come to bear with a new study for a less known therapy than you were studied in the study which you came to our center for. But let's say you were being involved in a genetic-based therapy or something like that. How would you assess the unknown risks in your own head and rectify those?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's something that probably all research participants should be considering. I mean, what are the risks? What are the benefits? What are the potential long-term benefits? But for me, a lot of it is just about, you only get one life. You get one shot at helping people out. You get one shot at maybe even helping yourself out, depending on the benefits that you get for yourself just as a result of participating. But usually it feels like, there's risks for everything. Live life, take chances, take risks. I could go walk outside and get the mail and get hit by a car today. The life is short enough, especially for people with cystic fibrosis. It's worth taking the chances. It's worth it's worth the risk almost every time. And if there was ever something that I felt particularly uncomfortable with, well, I'm not exactly sure what that would be, but it's possible that there's some study out there that I'd be nervous enough about to say, well, maybe I'm not ready yet. Maybe I want to see, if there's other research that's already happened in this area. Maybe I can do some of my own research to learn more about the process, learn more about what is being studied, what the intentions of the study are. And then, if it's too late to come back to that study's closed out by then. Maybe a few years down the road, even just maybe a few months down the road, I'll get another opportunity to participate in something similar. It's all about just weighing the pros and cons. A lot of people might say, I don't have time for this, and considering the potential risk, it doesn't feel worth it to me at this time in my life. And maybe that notion will change for them later down the road. But hopefully, as a result of just more successful research that continues to progress, we get more people who are like me and more interested in just like taking the chance and weighing the benefits and the potential side effects or whatever else could happen during the study and saying, it's worth it. I want to participate. And it's interesting too. I mean, if it's something that might be particularly risky, well, maybe there's some more intrinsic motivation to just participate anyway, because that sounds cool. It might be something that's particularly interesting. Who knows?
Excellent points. I want to turn to a slightly different topic and ask you all to give your perspectives on what should go through your mind in the process of reviewing an informed consent form. So maybe you could start with when you think about that from the patient side or the participant side, what are you reading that for? What kind of detail do you recommend people think about if they're new to studies? And what questions should they be asking when they're thinking about that document and reviewing it?
Yeah. Well, I always ask myself, well, what do I have to do? A lot of people are probably going to be mostly interested in learning what does my participation look like? Am I going to sit in a chair and they draw my blood and then that's it? Because a lot of studies are like that. And a lot of studies are like you sit in a chair and you fill out a little survey and then it's over. And then this was on the whole other end of the spectrum where you're committing lots of time to it. But just kind of thinking about, well, what is my experience going to be? What do I have to, what aspects of my life do I have to donate to this so that I can be a participant? And then also, what are they studying? Is this something that I actually have motivation to learn more about? Is this something that could help me in the future? Is this something that could help someone I know, or a family member, or just my community, the community of people with my disease? Is that something that can benefit them? The more yeses you get to these questions, the more likely participants are probably to agree and say, yes, let's do this. I want to donate my time to this. So that's what comes up for me initially. It's important to ask, all right, so if there's something that I'm nervous about, how easy is it for me to learn more about this? And if the researchers don't always have strong answers to the questions, you should be considering, if this is really early pioneering research and you're already feeling uncomfortable with it, you don't have to participate. Hopefully you'll get other chances down the road to participate in something similar. So, but like I said, depending on what the study is, you might want to just take the chance.
Rachel, I want to pose that question to you, but ask you from the research coordinator perspective, what are the kind of things you're looking for to see that the patient is informed, and how do you ensure that there's a proper informed consent process beyond what you've outlined before, and what are the kind of things that go through your head to think about that?
For me, when I have the patient here and like in a clinic room where we're actually doing screening visit, ready to go, and we have the consent in front of us, which I'm sure I usually send out and they've already reviewed and we've gone through initial questions, but it's almost like a secondary review. Do we completely understand? I like to go through study visits so that they know all the procedures that are expected on the study. I like to go through the timing of it and make sure it works with their schedule so that it is doable, especially for those patients that are coming from so far away, and making that, yes, I agree to come, I'm gonna participate, but yes, I know I'm gonna be coming every 2 weeks for, 2 months. The other thing I like to go through is most consents will have the known side effects on there. So, hey, here's what previous research has done. Here's what's expected. This is what we're going to look for. Let me know when these happen, if they do happen. Every CF patient's different. So the top 5 things that are expected may not happen to you, but we're also checking different things like safety labs to make sure we are being safe and that, everything's going okay and the patient's, safety is our priority. So we have those checks and balances to make sure, EKG is checked, we're checking cardiac function. We want to make sure everything is going according to plan. And so each protocol and safety consent has that written in there. So I just want to make sure the patient's fully understanding the time points, what's required, and then here's what we're doing to ensure safety. And then making sure that they understand the endpoints. Okay, here we are for screening. We come for these days every 2 weeks. At the end of it, what happens? Like, what information is being extracted? What information is going back to their treating center? For some studies, we compile the data and we say, hey, this is what happened, while on this study drug. And then their treating team takes over. So just making sure that they understand the full extent of the study and the things that we do to keep their safety in mind. And then as we're going through, I constantly ask questions that aren't like a yes and no question. It's more like, okay, what do you understand from this part? Or repeat back to me, not just open-ended questions, just making sure that they're able to understand and that they're fully committed. Again, completely voluntary, but at least they know what is expected as a study participant.
That's a great point. I know that sometimes when I put open-ended questions for the potential research participants, and they say I don't have any questions, and I say, okay, well, I don't have to answer any hard questions, or it's all clear. But you're right to say that some quizzing there may be necessary to make sure that someone's really gotten it. I guess I'd ask a follow-up question to both of you. I've heard this from patients that are potential research participants when I've introduced complex cases before. They say, I just can't fathom participating because I can't even understand all the science you're talking about, even if I've explained it fairly well to them. How would you all rectify if someone says, I don't quite understand every bit of what you're talking about scientifically, but I'm interested in participating?
Yeah, I can start with that one. I'm not like a super medical oriented person all the time, but over years of participating in these studies and learning more about my disease, you come up with better questions. But if there's something that's pretty involved and you're not sure what's going on, I would just take time to just check it out on my own. You're not always going to understand right there in the moment when you're talking to a physician what they're even saying. I mean, you're especially since you shouldn't always feel pressured into it at all. So you should always have extra time to go back on your own, do some research, learn things from, I could learn things from you, Dr. Solomon. I could learn things from Rachel, but I could also learn things from my own practicing physicians in Seattle. I could learn things from, cystic fibrosis websites, and do your own research, learn about it, take your time, take the time to study up on it. If you're still not sure what's happening, maybe at least then you'll have developed some more specific questions that can help you really bolt down what it is you're getting involved with. By the next time I were to have a conversation with you, Dr. Solomon, you take the time to generate your own questions that you think will help you understand the most about what it is that you're getting involved with.
I think that's really good advice. Rachel, do you have a thought about that question from the research coordinator perspective?
Yeah, especially with all the gene therapies coming up. I remember first hearing about it and all the information and seeing the DNA, RNA strand, and just being able to go and seeing all the resources that are out there and available, and taking the time to learn and go more in depth and seeing, okay, here's this gene therapy coming up. Where is it reaching? What will it change in our CF patients? And how can I, turn back around and talk to a research participant and say, okay, this is what I'm understanding of it. I like to draw diagrams. I'm a very visual person, so it helps me being able to see it, at the more medical level, so that I'm able to understand it better and explain it to patients. But there's so many resources out there, and a lot of it is available on the CF webpage, that patients are able to go on there and see what's all available. But having that extra communication and say, hey, I have a follow-up question about this, and having your CF team and your research team available to answer those questions, and at least try different aspects of helping with the understanding of a more complex study would help.
Yeah, I'm going to back up to a slide and emphasize something you said. We talked about, especially for newer therapies that may be in earlier phases, like gene therapies, bionic pancreases, bacteriophages, new antibiotics, that kind of thing, which are newer for all of us, that the team is really important. But I mean by that is the research team. And that's not just a research coordinator who may be doing the consenting, but the principal investigator who should be scientifically equipped to answer those types of questions, and the referring and local clinicians that are, involved with the patient. So Joe mentioned this earlier, that he, leaned on his local physicians, who are scientific physicians as well, but they have a unique understanding of him as a patient that we don't have from a referring site. But I think that thinking of that as a team, really, as a team on the research team side, that can really help to see many aspects of what's going on with the patient, and then bringing, of course, the potential research participant or subject, that is invaluable, because then you have all the voices you need there to really understand what's right, both in the consenting process, getting to starting the study, and then throughout the study, and then even concluding and following up with what the ramifications are for what was found. I think are extremely important. And we value it extensively. The study that Joe came to us for involved some follow-up after the study, as far as access to therapies. And so that was beneficial, because I had a relationship both with his treating physician, and we had established a strong relationship with him through the study. So it was an effortless communication. But if that's not there, that could hamper, especially if there were to be a challenge, like an unknown risk come up, or an unknown side effect or adverse event with the drug. So I think those are ways that extra safeguard that at the micro level, right with the patient and the research team. We're nearing the time to conclude the town hall. So I wanted to ask Joe and Rachel if you would conclude by answering for me the kind of question about, what if a person is coming to thinking about the first time to do research? What should be in their mind to get over that initial, not to get over, but to overcome that initial concern about breaking into the research world if it's very new to someone? And what advice would you give to be prepared for that?
Yeah, I'd say the first thing is to remember that, your study is it's voluntary. The participation is voluntary. There's no shame. There's no shame attached to backing out. If you feel like you need to do that, I mean, you can say, I'm done. And the idea is that you commit and you stay committed throughout the process. But if you absolutely have to, you're your own person. You can say, I'm getting a little bit too freaked out. There's too much going on that I'm not sure about. I'm getting uncomfortable. It's okay to back out. It's okay to say this wasn't the right time. I also think it's important to remember that the more you participate and the more experience you get as a participant, the more comfortable it is, and the better you get at learning about your own disease, your own condition. You're going to become smarter about asking questions for your own health with your own practicing physician too, not just with physicians and research staff that's involved in the current study. You'll have more questions, and it's just a fantastic way to learn about your condition, and it gets easier with time. I mean, and remember that it's normal to feel apprehensive and anxious about something that's new, especially when you're not sure what it is going to feel like to participate. I mean, that's human. That's totally fine. But I'd say those are the two big ones, knowing that, it's okay if you feel like you're overwhelmed. You can back out and try a different study that maybe it has less requirements, but also remembering that it's okay to choose to be a part of studies that are more simple in terms of what they're requiring of their participants, and then work your way up, right? Like you can start by just filling out a questionnaire, and even just the simplest questionnaires usually will require consent because you're participating in the study. So starting there, starting small and working your way up to more heavy duty participation, that's probably a good idea if you're feeling anxious about it. So
That I want to amplify what you're saying. I have some people have told me I'm interested in research, but I'm too apprehensive to do a study that might involve a new therapy, for instance, versus another type of study. And I have recommended them, well, if you're interested and want to learn more about the process, then a study that involves maybe a blood draw or a questionnaire or a simpler study may be a way to understand if the process is comfortable for you and to get a little familiarity with it. And then, may allay some concerns, not about the therapy aspect of it, but at least the concerns about, can I get the visits? Will I be informed properly? Can I trust the research team? Can I get to know them some? That kind of thing. And I think that's a great point. And I've emphasized that on the principal investigator side a lot with certain patients that ask me, but I'm glad that you second that. Rachel, can I get your perspectives?
Yes. So I would probably just say that they're not doing it alone. So if they are new to research, they have the research coordinator that's one-on-one with them. So it's in CF clinic, there's a nurse navigator, and they may have, depending on the size of the center, they could have up to 250 patients, to one navigator. If you're doing research, you have that research coordinator, that's your communication, the lines in between, and you're not doing it alone. We're here, we're with you. We want to know, we want to help you through the study. We're available, anytime, like Joe can tell you, he can call, text, even time change difference. And if anything were to come up, I have direct communication with you, Dr. Solomon. So there really is that almost hand holding, you're not doing this alone participation. So even if you're new to research, no matter what the study is, you have that coordinator that's there to help you and navigate you through.
Great. Can't thank you guys both, Joe and Rachel, for speaking tonight and for leading us off with this town hall series. I want to make a couple of conclusory remarks and then thank everyone for participating tonight. The first is that I think we've emphasized maybe the most important thing about ensuring your safety is a team-based approach. We are in this as a team between the research participants, that's you guys, and the research team and your local clinicians. And also there is an extensive team that you may not meet, but it's really working everything to ensure, first and foremost, safety, and second of all, a properly informed consent process so that you know what you're getting into to the best of our ability. And so this is really the aim for these studies. And the endpoints are the secondary thing. Protection of your safety and rights is the first and foremost important thing we're considering anytime we're approaching and or enrolling people in these studies at our center and elsewhere. As a prelude to the next town hall, we'll be talking on September 7th about the research referral process and how we are doing that through the Southeast Regional CF Cooperative, the CIRC, in our area. And you will hear from investigators both at UAB and also from Emory as two different speakers, and another patient testimonial as part of that process. So we encourage you guys to participate again, and please bring questions. We'd love to have more audience participation with the Q&A the next time if possible. And so we encourage you to participate again on September 7th. And with that, I'll just say thank you all very much for attending tonight, and we hope this was beneficial to you, and look forward to seeing you on our subsequent town halls September 7th and beyond. And thank you very much.